In the quiet village of Nianda, where the moon bathed the land in silver light and the air smelled of wet earth, a scream pierced the stillness one dark night, a sound so sharp that even the crickets fell silent. People rushed from their huts, clutching lanterns, their faces pale with fear. The sound came from the old footpath near the river, the one mothers warned children never to walk after sunset. There they found the lifeless body of a young girl, Abeni, the daughter of Mama Ife, a woman known for her kindness and songs that could calm even restless spirits. Abeni was just 16, full of laughter, her beauty compared to the dawn. But now her eyes stared blankly at the stars, her skin pale beneath the flickering flame of the villagers' lamps. No one knew what happened. Some said she slipped and drowned, others whispered of foul play. But when they carried her body home, the river behind them roared louder than it ever had before, as if mourning her death. That night, the village held its breath. Abeni's mother wailed until her voice cracked, her cries echoing through the hills like the sound of a curse. The elders performed rituals to cleanse the land, but even as the fire burned and the drums thumped, something felt wrong. A cold wind swept through the crowd, extinguishing the flames, and for a moment, everyone swore they heard her voice, soft, broken, calling from the darkness, "I am not at peace." From that night onward, Nianda was never the same. Cows refused to graze near the river. Children woke screaming from dreams of a girl dripping wet, whispering their names. And Mama Ife, her eyes hollow with grief, began to speak to shadows, as though her daughter still stood beside her. The elders told her to move on, to let Abeni rest, but a mother's heart knows what others do not. She said quietly, "My child cannot rest because truth does not sleep." The days after Abeni's burial were heavy like a storm that refused to break, and though the sun rose each morning, the village of Nianda felt trapped beneath a shadow. Mama Ife, once known for her laughter that rang through the market, now sat beneath the ancient mango tree every day, staring at the path that led to the river. The tree was said to hold the voices of the dead when the wind passed through its branches, and on some evenings, villagers swore they heard a girl humming the lullaby that Mama Ife used to sing. Children avoided that side of the village, clutching charms made of cowrie shells and red string to protect them from wandering spirits. One evening, as the crimson sun bled into the horizon, Mama Ife felt a chill sweep across her skin. The air stilled, and the mango leaves above her began to tremble without wind. Then, faint but clear, came a whisper, "Mama." Her heart froze. She looked around, eyes wide, but saw only the long shadows of dusk stretching across the ground. "Abeni," she called, her voice breaking. Again came the whisper, this time closer, "Mama." They lied. Mama Ife's breath caught in her throat as tears welled in her eyes. She rose to her feet, clutching her wrapper tight, trembling. "Who lied, my child?" she asked, voice trembling. But there was no answer, only the rustle of leaves and the faint cry of an owl. That night she could not sleep. She sat before her fire, staring into the flames as the words echoed in her mind. The next morning, she went to the elders, but they dismissed her claims. "Grief has made you see ghosts," they said. "Let the dead sleep." Yet, as she walked home, she saw strange footprints on the paths, small, wet, and bare, leading from the river to her hut. Her heart pounded as she followed them inside. They ended beside a Benny's bed, where her old wooden comb lay. The air smelled faintly of river water. Mama Ife fell to her knees, clutching the comb to her chest. "I will find your truth, my child," she whispered. From that day, she began asking questions. She visited the fishermen who had found a Benny's body, but their eyes shifted nervously. One of them, a young man named Kojo, avoided her gaze and muttered, "Don't go digging in the river's mouth. It bites back." But Mama Ife was not afraid. Love had already taken everything from her. What more could pain do? As the days turned 2 weeks, whispers began spreading through the village. Some said a Benny's spirit had returned. Others said Mama Ife had gone mad. But one night, as lightning split the sky and rain drenched the land, several villagers saw something that made their hearts pound with terror. A figure stood beneath the mango tree, drenched, hair clinging to her face, eyes glowing faintly like fireflies. She did not move, did not speak. Only when thunder roared did she vanish into the night, leaving behind a faint sound, the lullaby of Mama Ife. When the rain stopped, Mama Ife found her daughter's comb lying on the wet earth under the tree, clean and dry, as though untouched by water. That night, she did not cry. She only whispered, "I hear you, a Benny, and I will not rest either." The river outside gurgled, as if answering her, and somewhere deep in the woods, the ghost of the truth stirred awake. That night, Mama Ife dreamed of the river not calm and shimmering as it once had been, but roaring and furious, its waves clawing at the banks as if trying to escape its own bed. In her dream, a Benny stood in the middle of the raging water, her white dress soaked and clinging to her skin, her eyes glowing like lanterns in the dark. "Mama," she called out, her voice echoing across the water. "They threw me into the river. I did not fall." The words struck like thunder. Mama Ife reached out, but each step sank her deeper into the muddy ground. "Who did this, my child? Tell me," she screamed. But a Benny's image flickered like candlelight. Before she vanished completely, she whispered one word, "Chief." Mama Ife awoke, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. The name echoed in her mind, Chief Adisa, the most powerful man in Nyanda, feared and respected by all. He was the one who had sent gifts to the family after a Benny's death, offering goats and grain for her funeral. Everyone had praised his kindness, but now his generosity felt like a shroud to hide something dark. Mama Ife sat by the fire until dawn, the glow of the flames reflecting in her wet eyes. She knew what she had to do. At sunrise, she went to the shrine of the ancestors, carrying a calabash filled with river water, cowrie shells, and a Benny's comb. She knelt before the sacred stone and whispered, "If truth sleeps beneath the river, wake it. If the guilty walk free, bind their feet." The wind rose suddenly, and the calabash trembled in her hands before shattering, spilling the water into the earth. The air grew heavy, the birds silent. A sign. That evening, she visited the marketplace, her gaze sharp and searching. Chief Adisa's son, Cato, stood there boasting to his friends, his laughter loud and careless. When Mama Ife passed by, he stopped. "Good day, Mama Ife," he said, but his voice quivered slightly. She looked into his eyes, shung proud, and yet shadowed by guilt. Without a word, she turned away, but in that moment she saw what she needed, fear. That night, the ghost returned, not in dreams, but in the flesh. Villagers claimed they saw a Benny walking along the riverbank, her reflection not matching her steps. Dogs barked and refused to go near. When the sun rose, Chief Adisa's compound was filled with chaos. His cattle had broken free in the night, trampling his crops, and his wife swore she had seen a wet handprint on their door. "Your child is restless," she whispered to him, trembling. Chief Adisa's face turned pale, his hands shaking. But he told no one of the dream he had, the same dream Mama Ife had seen, of a girl standing in the river, her eyes burning like judgment. That day, he summoned Kojo, the fisherman, and warned him, "If she keeps asking questions, remind her where her place is." But Kojo's conscience had begun to rot under the weight of secrets. He could no longer sleep. Each night, he saw a Benny's face in the dark waters. Finally, he went to Mama Ife and confessed, voice trembling. "It was Kato," he whispered. "He followed her that night. She tried to run, but he pushed her into the river." The chief made us swear silence. Mama Ife fell to her knees, grief and fury twisting through her body. The world blurred as the truth sliced her heart. "Then may the river speak his name," she said through her tears. And when night came again, the winds rose, the river thundered, and from its depths came a scream so human, so broken, that every soul in Nyanda awoke in terror. The ghost had begun her vengeance. The next morning, the village of Nyanda awoke to whispers that traveled faster than the wind. People spoke of strange things that had happened overnight, windows cracking by themselves, goats refusing to eat, and the river bubbling, though no storm had passed. But the most disturbing tale came from Chief Adisa's compound. His son Kato had been found outside his hut at dawn, trembling uncontrollably, soaked as if he had walked through the river in his sleep. His eyes were wide and unfocused, and when the elders tried to speak to him, he only muttered one phrase, again and again, "She came for me." The chief dismissed the villagers, insisting his son was only ill, but fear had already begun to coil around his household like smoke. Servants whispered that a Benny's ghost had touched Kato's shoulder and marked him. That evening, Mama Ife sat in her hut, her face illuminated by the flicker of her small fire. Kojo's confession had torn her open, but it had also given her power. Truth was no longer a whisperette. As she stared into the flames, she heard the door creak softly. It was Kojo. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he said, "Mama, they know I spoke to you. The chief's men will come." Mama Ife nodded, calm despite the danger. "Let them come," she said quietly. "The river stands with me now." Outside, thunder rolled, even though the sky was clear. That night, when darkness swallowed the village, a scream echoed from the chief's compound, shattering, desperate, unmistakable. Villagers rushed with torches to find Kato thrashing on the ground, his body drenched, though not a drop of rain had fallen. His mouth opened, and a voice that was not his own spoke through him, "Confess or drown in lies." Then, as suddenly as it came, the voice was gone. Kato collapsed, gasping, and the river outside seemed to roar in agreement. The next day, the elders summoned Mama Ife to question her, accusing her of witchcraft and summoning evil spirits. But she stood tall before them and said, "It is not I who conjures the dead, it is the living who buried truth beneath water." Her words sent a murmur through the crowd. That night, the chief himself visited her hut under the cover of darkness. His voice trembled as he said, "End this, woman. Take your curses and leave my house in peace." Mama Ife's eyes glinted in the lamplight. "I did not call her back," she replied. "You did when you let your son's sin sink into the river. Spirits do not rest when lies live." Chief Adissa's composure cracked. He clenched his fists and hissed, "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Mama Ife said softly. "A father who buried another man's child with his silence." The chief left without another word, but from that night on, he never slept peacefully again. His dreams were filled with the sound of dripping water, with Ebony's reflection staring at him from the corners of his room. Each morning, he found his floors wet, his door covered in muddy prints of bare feet. And then came the day Cato vanished. They searched everywhere, the compound, the riverbank, the forest, but found only his torn shirt snagged on a branch near the water. The elders wanted to perform cleansing rituals, but Mama Ife refused. "Let the river finish what it began," she said. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the water shimmered gold and red, and for a moment, those who watched swore they saw two shapes standing in the middle of the river, a girl and a boy, hand in hand, before sinking beneath the waves. Some said the spirit had finally taken her revenge. Others said justice had merely begun. But one truth settled over Nianda like mist. No lie, no matter how buried, could silence the dead forever. After Cato's disappearance, Nianda was never the same. The laughter that once floated from the market vanished. Even the birds grew silent, as if the whole village held its breath. The elders tried to calm the people with prayers and chants, but no words could hush the dread that had settled like fog over the land. Every night the river hissed and gurgled louder than before, as though something alive thrashed beneath its surface. Children began waking from nightmares of a pale girl dripping water, calling their names. Some families packed their belongings and left before dawn, afraid that the curse of Ebony's ghost might spread beyond the water's edge. But Mama Ife stayed. Her grief had hardened into resolve. She no longer wept. Her eyes were dry and sharp, watching, waiting. She could feel her daughter's presence everywhere, in the soft rustle of leaves, in the whispers that passed through her window, in the strange warmth that sometimes touched her shoulder when no one was near. She knew Ebony's spirit was not done. Justice, once stirred, does not sleep until it drinks its fill. Chief Adissa had locked himself inside his compound, refusing visitors, his guards keeping everyone away. The once proud leader had grown gaunt, his face drawn and his eyes sunken. Servants whispered that he spoke to shadows, that he poured libations at midnight while begging forgiveness to a river that no longer listened. Then came the day the rains began, early dark clouds rolling over Nianda like a warning. On the first night of the storm, lightning struck the chief's mango tree, splitting it in two. The villagers took it as a sign. The ancestors had passed their judgment. The chief, trembling and desperate, called the elders together. "We must end this curse," he said, his voice hoarse. "Bring the witch to me." They sent for Mama Ife. She arrived barefoot, her clothes soaked from the rain, her head held high. When she entered the chief's hall, he averted his eyes. "You brought this upon us," he spat, though his voice wavered. Mama Ife laughed bitterly. "No, Adissa, you brought it when you chose silence over truth." He slammed his fist on the table. "What do you want from me, woman?" "Not from you," she said softly. "From her. My child still seeks your son's soul. The river won't rest until confession cleanses it." The chief's breath came fast, his hands trembling. "He's gone," he whispered. "The river took him. Then it will take you next, Mama," Ife said coldly. At that, the lamps flickered, the air grew icy, and a sound rose from outside the wind, carrying a girl's laughter. The elders fell to their knees, crossing themselves in terror. The chief's eyes darted wildly. "Please," he cried, "tell her I am sorry." But Mama Ife shook her head. "Tell her yourself." Just then, the doors burst open and the storm howled through the hall. Everyone screamed as water poured across the floor, swirling around their ankles. In the flash of lightning, they saw her, a girl, standing in the doorway, drenched, her eyes glowing faintly blue. "Abeni," the chief whispered, collapsing to his knees. "Forgive me." The ghost tilted her head, her voice a whisper that echoed like wind through bamboo. "I waited too long for your truth." She reached out a hand, and as thunder cracked, the chief gasped, clutching his chest, before collapsing lifeless on the wet floor. The water receded instantly, the air stilling as quickly as it had stirred. When the villagers dared to look again, Abeni was gone. Only her footprints remained, leading toward the river. Mama Ife followed them outside, her tears finally breaking free. She knelt at the riverbank and whispered, "Rest now, my child." But as the water shimmered under the fading lightning, she heard Abeni's voice one last time, soft and distant. "Not yet, Mama. Not until the village remembers." Then, silence heavy, final. The curse, it seemed, had claimed its last, but its shadow would linger forever in Nyanda's hearts. Days turned into weeks, and the storm that had swallowed Chief Adisa's life finally gave way to quiet skies. But the silence that followed was not peace, it was remembrance. The villagers of Nyanda spoke softly, afraid that even their words might wake the river's anger again. The chief's death was declared an act of the gods, and though no one dared say Abeni's name aloud, everyone knew the truth that now haunted their bones. Lies buried in water always rise with the tide. Mama Ife buried her husband's walking stick beside the mango tree that lightning had split, for it was under that tree her daughter's voice had first called her. Every dawn she placed flowers, their wild lilies, Abeni's favorite. The village began to change. Men who once abused their wives became gentler. Merchants weighed goods honestly, and even children stopped throwing stones at the river. Fear had become their teacher, but justice had become their shadow. One night, around the village fire, the old storyteller Baba Sefu gathered the children and began to speak. "Once there was a girl who died too soon," he said, "but her soul refused to rest because truth had been drowned." His voice was steady, his eyes distant, as though speaking to someone unseen. She rose from the river, not to haunt, but to remind. For every secret hidden beneath the surface, the water remembers. The children listened, the firelight dancing across their faces, and when a cool breeze brushed their cheeks, they clung to one another. From that night on, the tale of Abeni became more than a ghost story, it became a law of conscience. Those who sinned by deceit feared to drink from the river, for they said her spirit lived in its depths, watching. Mama Ife, now frail but resolute, found herself both honored and feared. People brought her gifts of yam and palm oil, calling her the mother who spoke with spirits. Yet she never grew proud. "It was not power that spoke through me," she would say quietly. "It was love refusing to die." In her heart, she knew Abeni had not returned for vengeance alone. She had come so that the living would learn to carry truth even when it was heavy. But peace, it seemed, was still far. At night, Mama Ife sometimes dreamed of the river again. In the dreams, Abeni no longer stood weeping or vengeful. She sat by the shore, humming softly, her feet touching the water. "You did well, Mama," she would whisper, "but they will forget, as they always do." And Mama Ife would reply, "Then I will remind them until my last breath." One dawn, when the mist rolled thick over the fields, villagers found her sitting beneath the mango tree, her eyes closed, a faint smile on her lips. She had passed quietly, her hands folded around her daughter's wooden comb. They buried her beside the tree, and for 3 nights, the river was Kamit's surface smooth as glass, reflecting the moon like a mirror. Some said that at midnight, if you listened carefully, you could hear 2 voices humming together, mother and a daughter, finally at peace. But legends never die easily. Years later, when strangers came to Nyanda and tried to build a bridge across the river, their tools went missing overnight, their ropes snapped, and their workers swore they saw a woman in white walking on the water, her eyes calm but unyielding. The village elders only smiled and said, "The girl whose ghost refused to rest still watches," to make sure the living do not forget what truth costs. And as the years turned into generations, Abeni's name was spoken again, not with fear but with reverence. Mothers told their daughters her story, warning them that silence can be as deadly as sin, and that love, even after death, can shake the heavens and the earth. And sometimes, when the moon rose full and bright, the villagers swore they saw ripples forming words across the water. Truth never dies. Many seasons passed, and Nyanda grew beyond the small, frightened village it once was. The world around it changed. Roads appeared where dirt paths had been, and the laughter of young children once again echoed through the marketplace. Yet one thing never changed: the river. The elders still warned that it carried memory, that it could bless or curse, depending on the heart that approached it. People from faraway towns came to see the place where Abeni's ghost had walked, and though they called it legend, they always lowered their voices near the water, afraid that the river might still be listening. The mango tree, now thick and ancient, stood tall beside Mama Ife's grave. Its roots curled deep into the soil, drinking from the same earth that had once soaked with tears and rain. Every year, on the night of the storm's anniversary, the villagers gathered beneath it, carrying candles and flowers to honor the girl who refused to rest until truth was spoken. The ceremony was quiet, only silence and flickering light reflecting off the calm surface of the river. They called it the Night of Reflection. During this night, everyone confessed something, no matter how small a lie they had told, a grudge they had hidden, a secret they had buried. And as each confession was spoken, they placed a single lily on the water. The elders said that if the flower floated without sinking, forgiveness had been granted. One such night, a young girl named Lammy approached the river. She had heard Abeni's story all her life, but to her it had always felt like a fable, something old people told to make children behave. Yet when she looked into the water that night, she felt a strange pull, a whisper in her ear saying, "Truth keeps the soul light." Trembling, she confessed how she had stolen her friend's beads and lied about it. She placed her lily on the water and gasped as it glided smoothly, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from awe. The next morning, she returned to the riverbank, where an old woman sat weaving baskets. "Did it really happen?" Lamy asked. "Did a Benny's ghost truly walk here?" The woman looked up, her eyes kind but knowing. "Child," she said softly, "the river does not lie. Whether she still walks or not, her truth flows in every drop." That day, Lamy promised herself she would never hide truth, no matter how painful. She grew into a woman of great wisdom, and when her time came, she too became a storyteller. And so the legend lived not as fear, but as faith in justice. The river became sacred. Before marriages, the young bathed in it to cleanse their hearts. Farmers poured libations to it before planting, whispering, "Let our harvest grow in honesty." And whenever drought came, they believed it was because people had begun to lie again. Even centuries later, when Neanda turned into a bustling town with bridges, schools, and machines, the people built a shrine near the river's Ija statue of a girl with outstretched hands, one reaching to the heavens, the other to the water. Inscribed beneath it were the words, "Truth never dies." On some nights, when the moon shines brightest, travelers still claim to see a soft light dancing on the water's surface, like a girl's spirit walking home. But no one fears her anymore. She is not a ghost of vengeance now, but a guardian of memory, a reminder that love can cross death, and truth, no matter how long it sleeps, will always rise again with the tide. For the river of Neanda is not just water, it is witness, and as long as it flows, a Benny will never be forgotten.